Well, for our veterans and for people who served in the military, this is your kind of story. We've got a soldier in this story. So for all of our people who served in the military, let's hear a big hoo-yah. Yeah, I thought we had a few of you out here tonight. So we're ready for the sermon and getting this season started. This season in Lent, we're going to be talking about faith that changes everything. And Lent is a good time to give attention to our faith. For Christians, it's a season to focus on the passion of Jesus, which means the suffering and the crucifixion, the death of Jesus. But in doing that, it's a season to deepen our connection to God for a spiritual renewal. Now, you don't have to be a Christian to be a person of faith. In fact, you don't have to believe in God to be a person of faith. The late Dr. James Fowler was a professor of mine in seminary. In fact, I had his children in the youth group where I was a director at the time. Dr. Fowler wrote one of the most important books on faith development, Stages of Faith, the Psychology of Human Development, and the Quest for Meaning. In this book, he makes some observations on significant aspects of faith that I believe it's worth our taking a moment as we not only have this service tonight, but we begin this season to think about what we're talking about when we talk about faith. So one of the points that Dr. Fowler makes is that faith is not peculiar to the religious realm. Everybody in some way practices a level of faith. You see, faith deals with what is of ultimate concern to us, what we believe to be ultimately true about life and the world. And those beliefs, when we act upon them, becomes our construct of faith. It directs the way we live. So for instance, for yourself, just finish the sentence, I believe in what? Whatever you say to finish that sentence starts to identify where your faith is. You might even start in a pretty simplistic way. I believe that mountains are beautiful. I believe that banana pudding is good for you. But take it up to its highest potential. Take it to its highest potential. I believe that love is the most important thing in life. I believe that the world should be just. When you start stretching it to what you believe is of ultimate concern, that this is as far as it goes, you are beginning to identify your constructs of faith by which you live. Everybody, even atheists, have some kind of faith in something that directs the way they live. Now, for those of us who are people of faith in God, Dr. Fowler also makes the important point that faith and belief are not the same thing. They are separate from one another. Beliefs are the way we express our faith. That is why we have creeds and doctrines. They are the attempts to express our faith. But our faith is different. I had a pastor friend of mine who illustrated the distinction this way. He had a dental problem that required the need to go to a specialist. So he's a little apprehensive about it. He had never been to this doctor before. He was sitting in the waiting room. He noticed all the diplomas on the wall. He said, I believe this was a very competent doctor. On the way back to the room where he would be treated, he looked out the window, saw a brand new Porsche. And there was a license plate that said Tooth Doc. He said, I believe this was a successful doctor. When he sat down in the infamous dental chair, the doctor came in, pulled up a stool, and took a moment to get to know him and learn about him. And he said, I believe this was a compassionate doctor. But then he took this gigantic drill with this long pointed end, and he said, now lean back and open up. And he said, it's like my belief went out the window, and now I had to exercise faith. Well, the distinction is certainly more complex than that. But the story illustrates a significant part of faith, which is faith is lived experience. Faith is something you do. It's more verb than noun. Faith becomes the way we live based on what we believe to be true. And then another point that Dr. Fowler makes is faith involves relationship. Trusting another is a part of faith. Now, we all, every day, practice faith. Every time you drive a car across a bridge, you're practicing faith. You've never met the engineers who designed that bridge. You've never met the workers who built that bridge, but you have faith that they did a good job and that bridge is going to support you. Every time you get on an airplane, you're exercising faith. You don't know your pilot. You don't know the people who built that airplane, but you have faith that it's going to get you where you're going safely. Now, it probably helps that we watch cars drive across bridges or people actually get off of airplanes and know that they're safe. Sure, the witness of other people expressing faith helps us. But nonetheless, whenever we take that step, we are expressing a faith. Now, this idea of travel, this metaphor of traveling, is appropriate to the discussion of faith because life is a journey. Every one of us is on a journey. And no matter what your journey is, faith is a required part of it. Our journey of life requires, in some fashion, a level of faith. So a good biblical definition, or really a good question here, is not so much do you have faith, but where do you put the faith you have? So a good definition from the Bible for faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. If you want to start to get at the source of your faith, just ask yourself, what are my highest hopes? What do I hope for? And where does that hope come from? When our hope is rooted in God and our faith gets above the cloud cover of just emotions and creeds and dogmas and religion itself, and it connects to God, who is all-powerful and all-knowing, who is all-loving and merciful, our faith enters into a realm where everything about life changes. So in this series, we're going to think about what Jesus says about faith. That's not to say that Christian faith is more important than other religions, that Christianity is superior. It's none of that. But if we're to honor our tradition, then we ought to know, how does Jesus treat faith? What does Jesus say about it? Most of the time when Jesus talks about faith, he talks about the little faith that people have. I don't think he's judging people so much. I think he's recognizing the way a lot of people feel about their faith, that it's not strong enough, that they wish it was stronger. And that's what we're going to talk about Sunday morning. I hope you'll come back and join us. We're going to talk about the desire for stronger faith. Tonight, we're going to look at one of the only two people in the Gospels Jesus commends for having great faith. We'll look at the other person in 2 weeks, a Canaanite woman. Tonight, we look at a Roman centurion. Now think about that. The only two people Jesus said, they've got great faith, were not Jews. They were pagans. They were people a lot of folks would have said, they don't even believe in God. So the Roman centurion we're thinking about in this story had a problem. His beloved servant was deathly ill. And chances are he had heard about the miracles that Jesus performed in the region of Galilee. And he maybe was even overheard to say, oh, if only I could get that prophet I've heard about to come and heal my servant. Whatever the reason, a delegation from the village, the elders of the village, went to track Jesus down. That's pretty amazing right there, because when you consider the animosity that existed between the Jews and the Romans, here are Jewish leaders wanting to do something to help a Roman centurion. So they track Jesus down. They tell him what the situation is. Jesus says, okay, well then lead me there. That word got back to the centurion, hey, they're bringing Jesus here. And he sends another delegation now to go and say, no, oh my Lord, don't. You don't need to come to my house. All you need to do is just say the word. I understand authority. I have soldiers under me. When I give a command, that's all it takes. They go do it. I believe if you just said the word, my servant would be healed. And Jesus said, I have never seen faith like this. Now, what precipitated that faith? How did it all begin? It didn't start because the Roman centurion was having a philosophical debate with himself about the existence of God. It did not start because the disciples came to him and handed him tracts describing the 4 spiritual laws and said, if you don't put your faith in Jesus, your eternity is in jeopardy. None of that. What precipitated his great faith? His concern for someone. His concern for his servant, whom he cared about. In the act of going to Jesus on behalf of somebody, he experienced faith, and more than that, he experienced Jesus' miraculous power. Great faith, according to this story, begins in going to Jesus on behalf of others. So here's a question for us for this Lent. Who do you go to Jesus on behalf of? Who do you bring before Jesus? People you care about and the needs in their lives. We're encouraging people in St. Luke's this season of Lent to take up the 5-3-1 challenge. 5-3-1. To pray for 5 people, to think about 3 people you would invite to a St. Luke's event, and to bring 1 person to an Easter service, either here or online on Easter Day, April the 17th. Now let me talk about these kind of in reverse order. The 1, why would we do this? What's important about bringing somebody? Well, how did you ever get involved in the Christian faith? How did you end up in a church? What are you doing here tonight? My guess is for a lot of us, somewhere back of our story was an invitation, was the involvement of another person. When we invite people to come to a service, we're not judging them. We're not saying, we know that you'd be a better person if you come to church. No. It's about saying, I'm a part of a community that I would love to share with you. How many of us, when we go to a great restaurant, we can't keep it to ourselves? I mean, you're already thinking about I got to go tell this person about this restaurant. This place is amazing. I got to share that. If it's something really good, it's like you can't keep it to yourself. If you experience good things in St. Luke's, that's an opportunity to share it. Now, the 3, invite 3 people to a St. Luke's event. Sometimes inviting people to a worship service is pretty intimidating, but we encourage you to invite 3 people to some other kind of event, just to introduce people to St. Luke's. We've got a number of things coming up in the weeks ahead that would be a great way to invite others. One would be a Lenten small group. If you're not already in a Lenten group, there's a table out in the gathering area, so that after the service, just go to the table. Pastor Mindy's going to be out there. Would love to talk with you about the groups we have meeting during Lent and investigate them. Find out about a group that might fit you. Think about other people you can invite to join you in your small group. On March the 19th, Saturday, the Indianapolis Philharmonic Orchestra is going to have a gospel choir concert here at the church, and it should be an outstanding event, a great event to invite somebody to. Our United Methodist Women have their spring tea, March the 19th. A great event for kids and for families. The Eggstravaganza on April the 9th, the Easter egg hunt and the program that we'll have. Also, this is not on the screen, but another event, David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, is going to be here at St. Luke's on Saturday, March the 31st at 6 o'clock. You can register for that event through the website. This is free, open to the public, and a great event to bring a friend to. Also, getting closer to Easter, the Stations of the Cross, a very reflective, meaningful experience. Spiritual Practices half-day retreat on May the 14th. There are a number of things that you can do there. And then the 5. Who are 5 people you can pray for every day, throughout Lent, right up to Easter Day? Who are 5 people you can pray for? Ideally, people who might not have a church family or a church home. People who might not even say that they have a faith in their lives, that they don't believe in God. Pray for them. Pray for them for God to bless them. Pray for them that they might be open to the spiritual life and what good things that can happen in life as a part of that. Here's the power of this. What we experience is not necessarily the ways the other person might get blessed. I believe when we do that, something happens to us. We have a relational faith. Jesus even said, if you're ever at the altar making your gift to God, and when you're there, you remember that there's somebody who's got something against you, get up and go to that person first. Come to God later. Wow. There are not many other religions that say something like that. To know God is to be in healthy relationship with each other. And when you spend every day praying for the same 5 people, you don't have to limit your list to 5. You can pray for 500. But when you're praying regularly for the same folks, it opens us up to experience things we cannot explain. I'll come back to that in a moment. Let's go back to the centurion. Let's think for just a moment about the nature of the centurion's faith. What was it about his faith that made Jesus say, that is great faith? Let's think about what the delegation of elders said to Jesus about this man. They described the situation, and then they said, this man deserves to have you do this. Now, what does that statement imply about faith? That God will only help you if you deserve it. That you have to earn your blessings. Isn't that why some of us, when things go wrong, our typical reply is, what did I do to deserve this? That's because there's this thing in the back of our heads that say, you've got to earn God's blessing. You've got to put the time in. But think about the man's response to Jesus. When he learns Jesus is coming, he sends a group to say to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. Now, there's a very practical reason he did that. The centurion knew that a Jewish person would be defiled if that person stepped inside of a Gentile home. What he did was out of consideration for Jesus. But when he said, I don't deserve you to come under my roof, Jesus says, that's great faith. That is great faith. Why? Because he realizes this man gets it. He doesn't have to deserve God's blessing. He doesn't have to earn it. That God's blessing for us is a matter of faith, not deserving. It's a matter of trust. That this God might really care about my situation in this life. That this God might really love me. It's as if Jesus was saying, oh my gosh, I have been surrounded all my life with people everywhere you turn are trying to earn God's blessing. Their brows are furrowed. They're walking around going, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not done enough. I need to do more. Why is God after me? And he's like, everybody pay attention. This guy gets it. Thank God he didn't have any faith. It helped him understand it all. He gets it. That accepting God is just taking a step of trust. Says, God, I'm so glad I don't have to earn it. Thank you. But it all started. You can't ignore this fact. It all started because he went to Jesus on behalf of another person. The interesting thing about this story is the centurion never met Jesus. If you read the story carefully, he's never in Jesus' presence. He never saw Jesus face to face. This is all going on between intermediaries, other people doing the talking. It's more than just a subtle point that Luke is making in telling this story. Luke is trying to tell the story for us, people today who say, oh, if I could just see for myself, if I could just be with Jesus up close, well, sure, then I could have faith. Luke is saying, hey, understand that one of the only people in the Gospels to be told he's got great faith never met Jesus. He never saw it for himself. He just took a step of trust. And the reason he took the step was because he cared about somebody else. Sometimes, when you let the need of somebody you care about be the reason you take a step of trust and you bring that person before Jesus with all of your questions about God, with all of your doubts that you might have, you never know when you might experience a reason to have faith. Let me close with this story. Years ago, I was in a church, and our board chair was the president of a local community college. He actually was the president of the Association of all community college presidents in North Carolina. Very smart, well-educated man. He got up to lead the board meeting one night, and he said, you know, for the devotion tonight, I want to share the devotion myself. He said, many of you have probably never heard me or my wife talk about our son-in-law. And that's because we can't stand him. He's just a rotten guy. We just can't. We're going to be honest. I cannot stand my son-in-law. I knew my daughter shouldn't marry him. She got married anyway. And pretty soon, we knew that there was abuse going on. We believe most of it was verbal, but we also think a time or two there was physical abuse. We complained about him every day. We'd run him down. We'd go on and on about it. He said one evening we were in the bedroom and we were doing our daily ritual, complaining about our son-in-law. What did he do now? I heard this happen. On and on and on. And then it's like after we'd already exhausted everything there was to talk about, we got quiet, and he said, it's like my wife and I had the same revelation at the same moment. We said, you know, we complain about him. We never pray for him. And it hit both of them like a ton of rocks. Like, we know that that's what we got to start doing. So they made a commitment not to complain about him again, but to pray. And not to pray like, Lord, would you strike him with lightning? No. Lord, be good to him. We don't know why he's this way, but there's probably a good reason. And he's your child. And we know you love him. Lord, may he just discover your love. Be good to him. It was some months later when out of the blue they got a call from their son-in-law. He explained how not long ago, a friend of his at work who had been inviting him to church, and he would turn it down every time. No, 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 no. How many times do I have to tell you no? He was never going to go to church. But one day, okay, I'll go. He went to church with his friend. He didn't exactly describe what happened, but it was enough to make him feel like, I want to go back. And he went back again, and he went back again, and something began to change. He said, I'm calling you all because I know I've been a rotten husband, and I've apologized to your daughter, and we're working on our marriage. But I'm calling not just to tell you that. I'm calling to say, I know I've been a rotten son-in-law. You all have been nothing but good to me, and I've never returned it. I'm calling to say thanks, and I hope you'll still accept me. Our board chair, with a tear in his eye that night, said, when my wife and I started praying, I'll be honest, I didn't believe it would matter. I didn't believe it'd make a difference, but we prayed anyway. And I believe again. Where's your faith today? Some of you might feel like you've lost your faith. Life's been hard. Maybe you're here and it's just one last step to say, okay, God, I'll give you one more chance. Maybe some of you are here and you got to be honest. You're going like, I don't really have any faith. I've never really believed it all. Maybe some of you are in a pretty good place, but if you were honest, you would say, yeah, I'd like to grow in my faith. Maybe one thing we could all have in common is that rather than focusing on any of our own obstacles with God, we'll just go on behalf of others to bring them before Jesus and see what happens. Let us pray. Lord, you understand where each person is tonight. Those in this room, those who are watching. You know where we've been. You know the questions we have. You know where we are in our faith. And you want to meet us in some way. But you also invite us to take our steps, because ultimately, somewhere down the line, for faith to be faith, a big step has to be taken. A step of trust. A step of willingness to reach out to you even though we might not even believe you're there. And maybe a good way to start that is to not focus so much on our own troubles and difficulties, but to think about other people who just need help and to pray for them and see if along the way our own faith comes to life in a new way. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.